Welcome back. We want to bring you GE Aerospace earnings this morning. The estimates were $1.60 on earnings with revenue of $10.72 billion. And the numbers are $1.86 adjusted EPS on revenue of $12.39 billion. So it looks like it's better than expected. We do not know what the company is saying about the guidance in the future. The stock is flat right now at $302.74. Wow. The stock just turned around as these earnings are hitting. As you could see, the stock right now is in positive territory again. The earnings appear to be better than expected at $1.86 a share adjusted on revenue of $12.39 billion. That is better than the estimates of $1.60 on $10.72 billion. Stock is jumping right now up 2%. This stock has had quite a run, Mark Tepper, in the last year.
Yeah, so, I mean, one of the things I see here that they're talking about right now is GE right now has $170 billion in commercial services backlog right now. That is absolutely incredible. Yeah, I mean, you've seen quite the turnaround. This thing a year ago was $175. So, I mean, it's almost doubled over the course of that time frame. Definitely a changing of the guard.
Yes, that's right. Larry Culp up 2% on the stock right now, helping the Dow Industrials up 264. Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance headed to Pakistan as the second round of U.S.-Iran peace talks appear to be on track, while the U.S. forces maintain that blockade on Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz. The ceasefire agreement is set to expire tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. The president telling me on the phone on Sunday every item has been negotiated with Iran, and if no deal is reached, that the U.S. will blow up every single power plant and bridge in Iran. The president said to me that the U.S. is dominating. He also posted on Truth Social this, teasing that his Iran deal will be far better than the 2015 JCPOA deal reached under President Obama. He called that deal one of the worst deals ever made. Joining me now is Tennessee Congressman Andy Ogles. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. What's your assessment of where we are here in this war? The president told me it's close to ending, but we don't know what's going to happen right now in Pakistan this afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, we're the dominant predator really across all landscapes, and I think the president has done an excellent job of sending a message to the world, but also Iran that we're done with the war, the exportation of terror, and look, the Persian people have an opportunity to get their country back, and so once this regime recognizes that we're not going to stop until that happens, the world is a better place.
Let me move on to your business at hand there on Capitol Hill. This morning, Senate Budget Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham is expected to release the text of a budget resolution. It's expected to direct the Judiciary, Homeland Security, and Governmental Affairs Committees to draft long-term funding legislation for ICE and Customs and Border Patrol. Since your colleagues on the left, the Democrats, are refusing to fund any of this without what they call enforcement guardrails, Congressman. What are you expecting to do in terms of this reconciliation? I know the president told me last week that he wants it to be, quote unquote, slim. But there's also this potential of a third reconciliation plan before the midterms, which I'm told the speaker is considering. How do you see this all playing out?
Well, I mean, what we've seen in the Senate is their inability to get anything done. And so through the budget reconciliation process, that lowers the vote threshold. So, obviously it's policy driven, it's numbers financially driven. But there's a lot we can do through that process. And it's important because the American people want us to fund the freaking government and get it back open. And so, their inability to do their job is their problem, not ours. The American people want solutions, and reconciliation is the path to do that.
So where do you stand on that? I mean, do you agree? Do you support the idea that you do a reconciliation? The president wants us on his desk by June 1st, and that would just include funding for ICE and CBP?
Well, I think we should get as much as we possibly can. Obviously, there's got to be the will of the body in both chambers. But yeah, let's get as much as we can. I'll reach out to the president. I'll reach out to the administration and try to expand the scope because, again, America is waiting, and we have an economy that we need to address. And part of this uncertainty that you have in the marketplace is, it spreads throughout the economy. And so it's important that we do this. And if we have to do a third one, let's do that as well.
I mean,
but again,
that's what I'm saying. I mean, it would be pretty unprecedented to do 3 reconciliation plans, right? But that's what the conversation is. What would you like to see in a third reconciliation plan? Are you discussing the Save America Act and making that a budgetary item?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, anything we can do to secure our elections is important. It's an 84% issue for Americans, Republican, Democrat, Independents, black, white, brown. It doesn't matter. They think you should have to have an ID to vote. So again, a lot of this is common sense. It's not very controversial. We should want to secure the borders. Let's fund the borders. Let's make our communities more safe. And you look at the crime in Memphis. It was one of the most violent cities in America, but because of President Trump, it's safe again because of what the president is doing. So again, let's get back to getting the job done versus some of this vile political rhetoric that you see from the Democrats.
So where do you want the defense supplemental then? Talking about what? The Pentagon is asking for $350 billion. You've got $100 billion Iran war supplemental. Where does that money go? Is that the second reconciliation on the president's desk by June, or do you think that goes in the third?
It would probably be in the third because, one of the things that we would want to do as a conservative, or I would want to do as a conservative, is how do we pay for it? Let's find those pay-fors. So let's trim where we can the waste, fraud, and abuse. We know it's there. There's opportunities to save money for the American people. And ultimately, all of that affects the economy as we go throughout the summer, through the travel season, and ultimately leading to the midterms.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're going to be on recess the week of May 4th, which is what the calendar says right now, then you return May 11th, you don't have a lot of time to get this on the president's desk by June, do you?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they keep us that week, but that's fine. We've got a job to do. Let's get it done. And look, if we have to work through the August recess, and we have to work the 4th of July, we have a job to do, and expectation of the American people is that we get it done.
There certainly will be a lot of celebrating July 4th weekend anyway, right? That's our 250th birthday. All right, the president and House Speaker Mike Johnson making a last-minute push against Virginia's redistricting ballot measure during a tele-rally last night. They're urging voters to reject the referendum, calling it a partisan effort by Democrats. This measure on the ballot will allow Democrat lawmakers to draw a new, even if temporary, House map before the 2030 census, potentially shifting the delegation to a strong Democrat advantage, creating a possible 10-to-1 edge. Virginia's current congressional delegation narrowly controlled by Democrats already, 6-5, Congressman. What's your take going into the midterms on all this redistricting?
Well, I think what you'll see is if it passes, you'll see other states like Florida, for example, getting more aggressive with their maps. Ultimately, if we go this kind of back and forth on the maps, I think the Republicans, we have the advantage on the field, if you will. But that being said, let's get back to representing the people. John Quincy Adams, it's the people's house. It's supposed to be a representative body reflective of the population. And when you're going 10-1, that's not what our founders intended. And it's clearly an attempt to grab power.
That's a good point. Good to see you, Congressman. We so appreciate you taking all that on. Thank you. Congressman Andy Ogles on Capitol Hill. We'll be right back.